Whether thou art a ghost that hath come from the earth, or a phantom of night that hath no home, or one that lieth dead in the desert, or a ghost unburied, or a demon, or a ghoul, whatever thou be until thou art removed, thou shalt find here no water to drink. Thou shalt not stretch forth thy hand to our own. Into our house enter thou not. Through our fence break through thou not. We are protected, though we may be frightened. Our life you may not steal, though we may be scared to death.
Welcome to Scared to Death, Creeps Peepers, Roberts and Annabelles. I'm Dan.
Hello, Dan. I'm Lulu.
Hello, Lulu.
Hello, handsome.
Thanks. Couple quick things here, and then we get into the stories. First off, just thanks for so many wonderful recent ratings and reviews on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, elsewhere lately. It really helps us find more listeners, especially this time of year. And another good way to help us reach more horror lovers is just to talk about the show. So hopefully we're making content worth sharing.
Tell your friends. Bring them along for the ride.
Bring them along. And then Lynze has a live show and charity announcement.
Yes, I have just a quick up top here. Don't forget that next week, the tickets for the live Scared to Death are going to go on sale. We'll have a more thorough announcement on next week's show with all the info. It's in last week and the weeks before, episode description and announcements there. So you can just visit moment.co/scared to death if you have any questions at this moment. And then possibly more exciting than a live show. I mean, maybe.
I'm excited for the live show, but yes.
I know, me too. But I am also every month so excited to share our charitable donation that our Bad Magicians, Annabelles, and Roberts, and just general supporters make possible. So thank you so much for allowing us to continue to give back. Like many of you, we have kids and they went back to school, and that inspired this month's charitable donation. A suggestion that came to us from fan Regina Rowland. This month's charity donation is going to Beyond Differences, whose mission is to inspire students nationwide to end social isolation and create cultures for belonging for everyone. They are building a future where all youth are accepted, valued, and included, and all differences are celebrated. Beyond Differences is a student-led movement empowering students to change the culture of schools and to help tackle loneliness and foster a sense of community. I mean, come on. How great is that? Mm-hmm. I would have loved that, and I can't even imagine how much more important an organization like this is in today's modern era with social media.
Absolutely.
So if you would like to learn more for yourself, if you'd like to get involved with this, or if you would like to find out how to get this program brought to your kids' schools, please visit beyonddifferences.org. We will be sending them $12,600, and then we will be putting another $1,400 into the scholarship fund for 2025.
Awesome.
Good job, guys. Good
thank you.
job.
And now, how many fan-submitted stories do you have this week?
I have two very fun, funky, interesting, wild, and cool tales this week, Dan. My first one will take us to a wooded-ish area. Okay. It'll make sense when I read the story to you. Some lost time, many people being in one place but not being able to find one another, which always throws me. Mm-hmm. And then my second story is about astral projection. We don't cover that often.
No.
But when we do, I continue to be fascinated by it. I understand it as a concept, but I have a hard time wrapping my head around the application of it. So it's a funky little story, and it really sends my head into a tailspin.
Fun.
Okay,
I'm looking forward to those. Before we get to Lynze's stories, I have my standard two. My first story is set somewhere in West Texas, maybe centers around some black-eyed children.
Maybe.
You'll see what I mean once you hear it. And then my second story is set in two different locations in South Carolina that both claim to be haunted and both share the same name of the Rose Hill Plantation. So two haunted Rose Hill plantations in South Carolina. And I'll, of course, go over some of their history and then haunted lore for both locations. What spoopy socks are you wearing this week to keep the pre-story tradition going? I think we're up to almost 300 different pairs now when you factor in all the monthly bonus episodes for subscribers.
Just as a reminder, if you send socks, please send a note with them so we can properly thank you for sending them in. And after they are worn on the show, we do have a fan in New Mexico who sends me a message every year, and we take the socks and send them to her, and she washes them and packages them up with some goodies for those in her community that are housing insecure. This week, Flamin' Hot Cheetos socks.
So random.
Which is hilarious to me on so many levels because one, I don't like Flaming Hot Cheetos. Two, I barely enjoy a Cheeto. But you, Dan, you love a Cheeto.
I do love them. Yeah, love them.
Our daughter hates Cheeto dust.
She does.
She hates the dust.
So fun. And now here we go. A random modern encounter tale from another dark corner of the internet. Grandma Heidi didn't like kids very much. To be clear, she wasn't biologically my grandma. My birth parents had gotten divorced when I was little. When I was 10, my mom married Phil, my stepdad. Phil was 14 years older than my mom. I remember thinking that it was so weird that he was in high school when mom was just a baby, before I understood that by the time you're an adult, those age differences don't matter in the same way.
Totally.
Grandma Heidi had been an older mom too, almost 40 by the time she gave birth to Phil. So when I was a little kid, she was already in her 80s. I'd always thought of older women as cuddly types, the kind who could make you cookies and hot chocolate and knit you a cozy sweater. The kind with a fuzzy poof of gray hair on their heads, an apron tied around their waist, always pulling out a steaming tray of something from the oven.
Okay.
But Grandma Heidi was not like that. Not at all. It's just a long weekend, my mom told me with a reassuring smile as she and Phil lined up their suitcases in the front hall. Grandma Heidi had a little bit of a health scare. She's okay, but Phil and I need to go visit her. Why can't I come? I whined. I was about to spend the weekend with my Aunt Deanna and her rowdy band of boys, 4 of them, between the ages of 8 and 16. It sounded much better to curl up in what I was imagining was a cute bungalow in western Texas, watching storms roll in across the desert as Grandma Heidi made me some soup from scratch and let me watch all the TV I wanted. She's my grandma, isn't she? My mom hesitated, waited until Phil was outside, packing their luggage into the trunk. She's not really that kind of grandma, she said slowly. She's always liked her independence. Kids don't really interest her. But she had Phil, I protested. And she loves him very much, my mom said patiently, but in a way I didn't quite believe. But I think raising him was a challenge for her. She likes her peace and quiet. None of this made any sense to me. I was an only child, and I was quiet. A girl who liked coloring and writing in my journals. What wasn't peaceful about that? Plus, it seemed kind of rude to me to write off an entire group of people because they happened to be born much later than you were, but there wasn't much I could do about it. Soon, Mom and Phil were getting in the car when I was being picked up by my Aunt Deanna, whose youngest son, Charlie, immediately slipped a spit-covered fingertip into my ear, a wet willy, as we drove away from my house. It was the same story every time the subject of visiting Grandma Heidi came up for years after that. She doesn't like children. She likes her peace and quiet. She's not really the nurturing type. I was 21, and Grandma Heidi was the ripe old age of 100 when I finally met her for the very first time. Time now for the tale of Grandma Heidi's black-eyed children. There wasn't much to do in West Texas. Grandma Heidi lived in a little town that had hardly more than a stoplight and a gas station. When Phil, Mom, and I pulled into her driveway, all my childhood fantasies of her cute little bungalow crumbled to dust. It was a white clapboard house with 2 leaning chimneys and a small porch. 2 stories, I could already tell, of cramped, narrow rooms. A rusted pickup truck was parked on the lawn. I guess Grandma Heidi didn't get around much anymore. The overgrown grass rustled in the wind, and when I touched the peeling white fence, it creaked, like even a little pressure might cause it to fall down completely. "This is where you grew up?" I muttered to Phil, who was whistling cheerfully as he unloaded our suitcases. "It's so depressing," he interrupted. "A little bit. It had a certain charm back in the day, but nobody's taken good care of the place for a long time. I'd like to get Mom into a facility in Amarillo or Lubbock, but she's more comfortable here. I think that at this point, the move would do her more harm than good, frankly. And there's a lady who lives with her here, Janine, but she's cleared out for the weekend." Ostensibly, our trip was to celebrate Heidi's 100th birthday, but also, I think all of us knew this would more than likely be the last time, or in my case, the first and last time, that we would see her alive. We made our way inside and Phil announced our presence. "Mom, I'm home." I was too busy looking at the inside of the house to introduce myself. It was hard to see through the pervasive gloom. All of the windows had been hung with thick, dusty curtains, some of them moldering and moth-eaten. A layer of sticky dust lay across almost every surface, from the floors to the banisters, and the kitchen was a wreck of plates washed but never put back in their places, and not washed well. Traces of hard, yellowish food still clung to the porcelain surfaces, and there was something black and viscous in the cracks on the tiled counter. But that wasn't all. In the front hall where I was standing was an enormous curio display cabinet, surely the most expensive piece of furniture in the house, and every shelf was filled with those little ceramic figurines of children. Hummels, maybe? There was something creepy about how they were frozen in old-fashioned poses. A girl snuggling a bunny to her face, both with two big eyes. A boy with curly blonde hair riding a bike. A little kid with glasses flying a kite suspended on a little wire. Or maybe I only thought they were creepy because of their owner. Why did a woman who hated children have a cabinet full of statues of, well, children? Or perhaps I thought they were creepy because I was already feeling weirded out about the door. A set of deadbolts had been nailed to the door frame. I counted 8 of them, each one looking a little newer than the last, like someone had put on a fresh deadbolt every couple of years and didn't remove the last one. 8? Who needed 8 deadbolts? Mom watched me look around. On her face was an apologetic smile. "What do you say we go to Walmart tomorrow? Look for some cleaning supplies," she asked. "Maybe give this place a little makeover." I felt too bad to turn her down. I only had to spend a couple of days here, but she'd come nearly every year for the past decade. "Sure thing," I said. "Laurel, come say hi to Grandma Heidi." It was Phil calling. Gently, I picked my way through the cluttered entrance. There were seriously boxes and boxes of stuff piled everywhere, files and newspapers and what I assume were antiques wrapped in newspaper. And I went into the dim living room. Phil sat on a faded couch next to an incongruously modern metal bed, the kind that you could adjust with a remote, so you could be sitting or lying down. And in that bed was Grandma Heidi. I don't think I'd ever seen someone so old before in real life. And I know that our culture treats old people badly. I know that youth and beauty aren't the only valuable traits a person can have. But she was so old, her face so weathered and caved in, that goosebumps rode across my arms and down the back of my neck. Her faded blue eyes stared at me limply from a cavern of wrinkled flesh, and her mouth, when she opened it to speak, revealed crooked teeth, and not nearly as many as she must have once had. "Who's that?" "That's Laurel, Mom. My daughter." She cocked her head in an agonizingly slow and trembling gesture, and looked at me, kind of, more like she stared above me. "Laurel," she began. She turned back to Phil. "She looks young." "I'm 21, I said, about to be a senior in college." She didn't say anything back. She just stared, silently in my general direction. I imagined that I could have said that I was about to go to the moon, and Heidi would have looked at me or looked past me in exactly that same way, like I wasn't even there. Later, Phil found me on the porch and put a hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry about that," he said. "She doesn't do so well with new people. Her brain, well, it's good for 100, but good for 100 still isn't necessarily all that good." "Don't worry about it," I shrugged, watching clouds roll past far above us. "I get it. I knew it probably wouldn't be an instant connection. Or any connection at all, I thought but didn't say." The bedroom I'd be staying in was Heidi's old bedroom, the entire top floor of the house, which still wasn't much. Also, it turned out that none of the lamps worked. I guess nobody had replaced the bulbs when they went out. But when I opened the dusty curtains, moonlight flooded the room and I could see that there was a mattress covered with a faded quilt on a queen-size bed frame, a small trunk, and a scarred and chipped armoire that turned out to be full of faded floral dresses and aprons. Well, at least I'd gotten the apron part right. Not wanting to be conscious for any more of this trip than I had to be, I tried to go to sleep, but couldn't. Something just felt wrong. Why had Grandma Heidi never moved away from this desolate place? From what I remembered, she got a good amount of life insurance money after the death of her husband, who died at work as the foreman of a factory in some kind of accident. She could have left this place behind easily, but she'd chosen to stay. And why did she hate children so much? I thought again of the curio cabinet, the little painted faces staring out into nothingness. I thought of how she looked at me, or rather near me. Why didn't she want to look at me directly? I was so preoccupied with these questions that I didn't notice, for how long I don't know, that the gate out front had started swinging open and shut. Creak. Creak. I got out of the bed and peered out of the window, expecting to see someone, maybe Grandma Heidi's roommate, Janine, forgot something, but saw nothing except the white fence gate moving back and forth. Back and forth. Great, I thought. Just another thing that was wrong with this stupid place. And I went back to bed. The following morning wasn't much better. I hadn't slept well. As I tossed and turned, waking and falling back asleep, I looked at the corner of the room at one point and swore I saw some kind of small figure staring at me, kneeling on the floor, its back hunched, like it had been creeping around and got caught. But when I rubbed my eyes and then shined my phone flashlight, it was gone. I had a real hard time sleeping after that. That put me in a pretty bad mood. Even worse, Mom and Phil had decided to go look at assisted living facilities in Lubbock after all. It's clear that she can't stay here, Mom said in an undertone as she gathered her purse. Even if it's not good to move her, Janine says that she tries constantly opening the doors. I guess it's one of those Alzheimer's things, where they try to get somewhere that exists only in their memory. Poor thing. I guess that was why they had 8 deadbolts. I also thought, wouldn't it have been easier to get one sturdy lock? Have Janine keep the key? Mom cupped my chin with her hand. If I start forgetting stuff, just hook me up with a doctor who will give me enough morphine to let me slip away quietly, okay? And then cremate me and go on a nice vacation. I grimaced. I hated that kind of talk, especially before I'd had coffee, which of course there was none of in this house. Okay, I said, ticking the instructions off on my fingers. Morphine, cremation, vacation. Got it. Good girl. Soon I was alone in the house with Heidi. The irony of this was not lost on me. I'd spent a good part of my childhood wishing for this exact scenario. But now that I was in it, it proved to be far more disappointing than I could have ever imagined. Still, I wasn't cruel, so I joined Heidi in the living room. Phil had set her up with a boxy old-fashioned TV turned on to The Price is Right. But within a few minutes, Heidi scoffed. Turn that thing off, rot your brain. She barked at no one in particular. But since I was the only person there, I did as she asked. After I turned off the TV, she smiled. After we have tea, Ruthie will come downstairs and we can all play cards. She spoke aloud again, still not looking at me. Ruthie? I wondered. Who the hell was Ruthie? You mean Janine? I asked, looking around. There was no sign of anyone else living in the house. She went away for the weekend while Phil visits. Phil, Heidi chuckled, a hollow sound from deep within her sunken chest. He's a good boy, not like his brother. Sleeps all day upstairs, just comes down for food, little rascal. Now I was seriously confused. Phil had a brother? That didn't make any sense. My mom had always told me that Phil was an only child, and that he hadn't exactly been planned. But I knew better than to correct people suffering from memory loss. That just messed them up more, so I settled further into the couch and gave her the best smile I could manage. Phil's brother, what's his name? William, she murmured, still looking out ahead at nothing in particular, the flab on her neck shuddering. She squeezed her eyes, closed. William, he was like that even as a boy, always begging for extras, and there were no extras to give. I went hungry many times for that little boy. That must have been hard, I said slowly. I wondered if she was talking about the Great Depression. The whole house reminded me of the Depression, actually. Those photos of crumbling cottages and barren landscapes, hard faces looking out at you as though daring you to challenge them. Everything was hard. Heidi waved a hand to labored effort and sighed, the breath rattling through her. We weren't special. We did what we had to survive. I couldn't help but smile. It was so that generation. We sat for a while longer. I couldn't stop staring at her, trying to figure out how someone who had been through so much managed to make it to her 100th birthday. She seemed to be staring out into the middle distance, somewhere far away where I couldn't reach her. And by the time Phil and my mom returned, I was feeling more than a little restless. I wasn't scared of Heidi anymore, but I really wanted to get out of the house. Anyone want anything in town? I asked, knowing that town was an overstatement. I was pretty sure I'd seen a KFC on the way in, though. Mom? Phil? I'm good. Phil smiled placidly and leaned in to murmur, Hey, thanks for spending a couple of hours with her. It means a lot. To me and to Heidi. Even if she doesn't say it. I laughed. I don't think it means much to her. She was sure that someone was here, though. Ruthie, I think? She isn't exactly having an incredibly lucid day. The smile completely dropped off Phil's face. She did. Ruthie? Are you sure? I shrugged. Probably just a random name she pulled out of some mental encyclopedia. She told me you had a brother, too. Maybe she got that from a TV show. Phil's face was now ashen. He looked over my shoulder at the living room where Heidi now snoozed, her mouth wide open. "No, she didn't," he said slowly. "But I told her not to talk about them. Talking about them only makes them more real to her." I had no idea what Phil meant by that. I chose to understand it as something between him and her, a closed-off, adult, private thing that I had no business knowing, and I got out of the house quick. The whole situation was starting to creep me out. The house, the crawling thing I thought I'd seen in the bedroom in the middle of the night, Heidi's vacant stare, Phil's reaction to Ruthie and William, not to mention the swinging gate that I could still hear ringing in the back of my head. Creak, creak. By the time I got back, the sun had just set. The house seemed somehow even more dilapidated when I pulled up in Phil's car. The addition jutting out from the house at an odd angle, like it was about to fall off entirely. I looked up at the window to the upstairs, and I swore I saw two small figures in the window, shadowy against the even darker background of the room. "Ruthie," I whispered. "William?" I tore inside the house, frightening Phil, who seemed to have fallen asleep at the kitchen table while paying some of Heidi's bills. "There's someone in the house," I told him. "Upstairs in the bedroom." "What?" Phil sat up, rubbing his eyes. "The bedroom? Didn't you say there were no working lights in there?" "I'm telling you I saw it," I said, already halfway up the stairs now. My brain was surging with possible explanations, that Heidi had taken in some people and just forgotten to mention it, or that they were squatters. But the figures hadn't looked full size. They'd looked like children. An icy pit formed in my stomach. I remembered what Heidi had said about the depression. Everything was hard. We weren't special. We did what we had to survive. Had Heidi killed her children? Had she been so desperate, had times been so tough that she chose to murder them rather than have them live through so much despair? I raced up the rest of the stairs, tore the door open to my bedroom, Heidi's bedroom, but nobody was there. "Hello?" I spun around. Standing on the landing weren't one or two, but 4 children. But they weren't regular children. They were utterly terrifying. I'd never felt so intensely afraid before in my life. They stared at me with pitch black eyes, their mouths curved into slight smiles. They looked too adult for real children, too knowing. It was impossible to tell which one had spoken, and I got the feeling that they'd all spoken, that they were some kind of collective, one entity split into 4 bodies. As I watched frozen, they all began to walk backwards and sink, their vast dark eyes still trained on me, and they walked down the stairs calmly, as if they'd done it 1,000 times. Finally unfrozen, I tore down the stairs after them, but they disappeared. Creak, creak. "Phil!" I yelled. "Phil!" He came into the entryway with his shoulders hunched. He was exhausted, I realized. And though I expected him to look baffled, to look confused about why I was shouting and running around like a crazy person, the look on his face was much worse. "You saw them, huh?" he said grimly. I pulled him into the kitchen, my hands slippery with sweat, and began my interrogation. "How many kids did she have, Phil? 4? Did she kill them all? What happened?" "Whoa, whoa, whoa." Phil put his hands up, telling me to slow my roll, though I could still see the heaviness in his eyes. "She had 2 before me. But she didn't kill them, Laurel. She gave them away." I frowned. "What?" Those things aren't her kids," Phil said, frowning, "but she thinks they are." Apparently, according to Phil, these black-eyed children started showing up just after Heidi had given her children away. It happened every year, like clockwork, at the beginning of autumn, the time when she'd handed over her young children. First, it was just a slight knocking on the door, the kind of thing you can mistake for the wind or a branch scraping the porch. Then it was their faces in the windows, faces in Heidi's bedroom window, on the second floor of the house, peering in, their pitch black eyes wide. "Mama, let us in. Mama, we love you." The children were gone, Heidi knew. The couple who'd adopted them had taken them to San Francisco, where, unaffected by the crash, they'd planned to buy land up cheaply and sell it when the crisis was over for a hefty profit. The children were in San Francisco, she told herself. They were far away from this wretched place. But that didn't stop whatever these things were from appearing at the house. "Please, Mama, it's so cold. Mama, open the door. We forgive you, Mama." When Phil was born, after Heidi believed she could no longer conceive and her husband stopped using protection, it had stopped for a while. Though he remembered thinking he saw small faces hiding at the edge of the woods sometimes, as though to beckon him closer. When he left for college and Heidi was alone, it got worse. All throughout college, he'd get phone calls from her crying, begging him to come home. "Please, they're back." They're not real, Mom. They're figments of your imagination. William and Ruthie are older now, in their 40s at least. How dare you say that, you little shit! For a while, she was able to resist answering their cries. Maybe she'd been hardened by the trauma. Maybe it was raising Phil and the death of her husband that made her a no-nonsense person who was able to ignore the beseeching voices outside her house that appeared every year on the anniversary of the children's departure. But as the years slipped by, she began to falter. Phil guessed that she started to wonder if maybe, just maybe, the children outside her door were telling her the truth. Maybe they had made it back to her. This was around the time that Janine became friends with Heidi and would stop by some nights to check in on her. And one night, Janine told Phil, when he was around 30, that she'd come home to see something very strange and upsetting. The door was cracked open when she got home, which never happened. And Heidi was sitting in the living room, her hands primly folded in her lap, her mouth stretched into a wide smile. She stank of liquor, her eyes watery and bloodshot. "They're back," she told Janine, tears threatening to spill from her eyes. "They left to get the rest of their things, but they're coming back." "Who's back, Heidi?" Janine had asked slowly, looking around. There was nobody there, except, she noticed, Heidi had started preparing a meal earlier and apparently forgotten about it. It had burnt, crusted over, and acrid smoke still lingering in the kitchen. She was lucky she didn't burn her house down. The children! They came back! They ran away! I know I shouldn't reward that kind of behavior, but I'm thrilled!" "Heidi," Janine swallowed, "you know that the children would be adults now if they came home." That seemed to throw Heidi for a loop. Her mouth opened and shut, and within an instant, Janine was racing up the stairs, intent on searching the house from top to bottom. But she found nothing. Soon after, however, Janine's husband died, and unable to afford her mortgage, she eventually began to rent a room from Heidi, even though she didn't ever really want to step foot in that house again. Infested, Janine would say of the house. It was infested. She believed that some kind of dark energy had taken a hold of it and wouldn't let go. She swore she heard things scuttling in the walls, swore she saw dark shapes moving. Once, she said, she walked into her bedroom just in time to see a black blur disappear under her bed. She was too scared to see what it was, too scared of looking under her bed and finding children with wide smiles and pitch black eyes. Heidi died later that year. She barely made it a month in the Lubbock Assisted Living Facility. We visited just once to pick up her things. The staff there wouldn't say much about her. It wasn't all that shocking that a 100-year-old woman died after all. But when I asked, one nurse did mention to me that Heidi had some very interesting visitors in the days before she died. It was a group of kids. She couldn't say how many of them, dressed in limp, faded clothing. Unlike a lot of the other kids who came to the facility, they were exceptionally polite, and they went right to Heidi's room. The nurse assumed they were grandchildren. When the nurse heard screaming, she assumed it was someone else on the floor, the Korean War vet maybe, who had night terrors, or the woman who'd had a stroke. But it was Heidi. She was alone by the time she checked on her, and the kids were gone. Just a few days later, she was dead. She never said what those kids did or said to make her scream. Hopefully, she's moved on to a better place now where those children, or whatever they really are, can no longer torment her.
My God. What a horrific combination. Alzheimer's and black-eyed children.
Uh-huh.
That feels like some cruel and unusual punishment from the universe. That's just, any memory, Alzheimer's, MS, Parkinson's, like all these like neuro diseases are just so awful and sad on so many levels. And then when you layer that with these black-eyed children, how many were in the nursing home with her? What the fuck?
I know. And I said like maybe up top because I'm like, these entities in this story look and act like black-eyed children according to the lore. They want to be invited in. But then once inside the home, they didn't seem to kill anyone. They haunted Heidi. They seemed to torment Heidi. And then and I find the connection to her actual children odd. Like two children. I don't know. Just haven't like seen this before.
Didn't we have a other nursing home tale of person in a nursing home and they would see a black-eyed child outside of their window?
But then they would die. They
Oh,
would,
yeah,
They would
after they would
invite.
s-
Yep. They would invite them in. We assumed,
Uh-huh.
and then that person would die, and then a new person would go in that room. 'Cause I
Yeah.
believe that story was told from the perspective of somebody who worked there for a while.
nurse or something, yeah. But we don't know, or correct me if I'm wrong, we don't know if every time you invite a black-eyed child in, if it kills you.
No, we. I mean, the
So-
lore in them is pretty skimpy.
Yeah,
But just most other stories, I guess there have been stories we've covered. Well, I don't know if there's been a story we've covered before where the kids were invited in but didn't kill people. Maybe.
I mean, it's almost more terrifying to think that they could come in and then just never leave.
Yeah, what were they doing?
I don't know, but they're attached to Heidi, clearly,
Mhm.
since they followed her to her memory care facility.
Mm-hmm.
Ah.
Yeah, strange story.
Also, yes, Hummels and like precious moments and all those things,
yeah.
they are weird. They're creepy.
They are a little weird. My great grandma was really into them. Grandma Betty for a while was really into them, and there's still some around her house. But growing up at my grandma and grandma and great grandma's house in Riggins, lots of those little figurines.
Yeah, my mom loved a Hummel. She had some. And
Yeah, they were real popular for a while.
my brother and I broke one time playing soccer or something in the house.
Did she
and
get so mad?
Oh, yeah. She got so mad because it broke. Of course, we did not tell her.
Yeah.
Then we glued it back together and put it in the
Uh-huh.
hutch. And then once she found it, it might have been 6 months. It might have been 6 years. I forget how long it was after it actually happened that she found it that we got in so much. She was devastated.
Yes, they're also like collectibles. I don't know if your mom was into that part of it, but like
Yeah.
some people treat them almost like investments too.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I think that's why St. Joan was so upset.
Yeah, because they lose all their value.
Well, now how is she ever going to retire? We just, we ruined
Her humble
everything.
fortune.
I know.
So,
Meanwhile, I have no idea where the Hummels are now.
yeah, again, no pics posted along with this story, but I did find this searching for West Texas rural dilapidated house.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly what I pictured.
Yep, that's
Just
what
like
I was picturing.
I mean, I think we all know this house and it exists across probably the entire world.
Mhm.
You know, a big chunk of land,
Yeah.
unkempt yard, lawn overgrown, might even like look lush, but is just
Uh-huh.
overgrown with weed and grass. And, you know, there's a busted up car in the driveway. And
Yeah, generally reads to me as like an elderly person living there who, like, when they were
Yeah.
younger, probably had the energy, the interest
yeah.
in taking care of a big piece of property, but then it becomes too much for you, but you don't want to leave, and it just kind of, falls into disrepair.
Yeah, I think at a certain point, well, I think we all know this. At a certain point, we begin to lose our independence.
Yeah.
And letting go of our place that we live, that we worked so hard to save for.
It's got to be brutal.
Yeah, it's not something we look forward to.
And then this next picture, photoshopped image I found of what I imagine roughly these entities look like.
Yeah, totally.
This picture comes from an article about cryptids and urban legends at clarkmuseum.org. It's the website for the Clark Historical Museum in Eureka, California.
Okay.
And that's all I have for this one.
Yeah, black-eyed kids, man.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of cracking up when Laurel was like annoyed with her mom for bringing up like end of life care.
Uh-huh.
I was just recently talking to one of my girlfriends about it who works in hospice. She's a social worker. And I said, man, I'm like, Dan and I have an agreement. Like, if we are terminally ill and we know that we're reaching the end, just heroin to the moon and let us go. And she said, she was like, absolutely. She's like, it is, when you work in that space and you're just constantly watching people of all walks of life die.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, we're all marching towards the same end. And if you can control that final step,
Yeah.
for me, it's either that or, as my dad says, I want to wake up dead.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I get it.
Know, just going away peaceful in your sleep at that age sounds like the best case scenario.
Yeah. And I think there's probably something to not seeing it coming.
Oh, absolutely.
I think
The
that's
dread of that.
Yeah. But for those of you who are extreme planners, Dan and I are in charge of like practically everyone in our family's estates. And I say estates because that's just the word that is used.
Yeah,
But
they don't have estates.
they don't have estates, not really. They have wills. But we're the executor of like, I think like 6 or 7 wills combined between the two of us. But I recently saw something on social media called the NOK box, N-O-K, and it stands for next of kin. And I dug into it pretty extensively, trying to understand what it was. And we kind of already have a system in place. But for those of you listening who have elderly parents, grandparents, people that you are in charge of, I would absolutely recommend this. This is not a paid endorsement. You could buy the product and it could suck, but I thought it was a really smart way of making sure that all the affairs are in orders, because I have lived through a lot of passings in my family, and even when you think you have it all squared away, you most certainly do not.
Yeah, that's great that there's like these products out there for things like that.
Yeah, it's really cool, because we all are going to need some version of that.
Okay, are you ready to move on to some haunted plantations in South Carolina?
Let's go.
We weave back and forth between historical setup and the paranormal in this one, so I'll just jump straight into the title here. Time now for the tale of 2 haunted Rose Hill plantations. In South Carolina, there are 2 allegedly haunted plantations that share the same name, the Rose Hill Plantation. One's located upstate or upcountry, and the other sits in South Carolina's low country. The Rose Hill Plantation State Historic Site, located in Union County, is the upstate haunted location, and the former home of William H. Gist, G-I-S-T, but Gist, the 68th governor of South Carolina. Gist lived in a Georgian-style 3-story house that became known as Rose Hill because of the rose gardens on the 2,000-acre property. By 1860, there were 178 enslaved people on the property. It was from Rose Hill that Gist wrote to the governors of Louisiana, North Carolina, Mississippi, Georgia, Alabama, and Florida, suggesting that if Abraham Lincoln were elected president, South Carolina might secede from the Union. Gist helped instigate a secession convention in South Carolina, which led to the creation of the Ordinance of Secession that preceded the American Civil War. William Gist died in 1874. The mansion remained in his family following his passing, but the family no longer lived on the property, and the land was leased out to tenant farmers and sharecroppers. The U.S. Forest Service purchased Rose Hill over 60 years later, in 1938, and it became part of the Sumter National Forest. Today, the only original structures still standing are the so-called Big House and the Kitchen House, and the ruins of some tenant houses are also still on site. In 1942, a man named Clyde T. Franks, a representative of the Federal Land Bank, managed to purchase the remaining structures and 44 acres of surrounding land from the Forest Service, and in 1943, he opened the home to the public and launched restoration efforts. In 1960, Franks then sold the property back to the government, to the South Carolina State Park Service, which owns it today. And something would happen 4.5 decades later that many believe greatly added to the stories of the site being haunted. The Union Rose Hill location was the site of a modern-day tragic event that some believe left residual dark energy on the property that can still be felt. On June 7, 2005, 29-year-old Mark Bobby Blackwood murdered his 26-year-old wife Caroline before ending his own life. Mark purchased a .45 caliber pistol, went to his wife's house at the Rose Hill State Historic Site, where she both lived and worked as an interpreter, sharing the county's history with visitors at the park, shooting her twice before shooting himself. The Union County Sheriff's Office later determined that Mark and Caroline were fighting over finances and a court date involving Caroline's son from a previous marriage. And ever since, some visitors have claimed to have heard phantom gunshots, what sounds like a couple arguing, or to have witnessed shadowy apparitions at or near the site of this tragedy. And I'll share a specific account of an alleged paranormal encounter at this Rose Hill location after introducing the next location. The Rose Hill Mansion in Bluffton, South Carolina was built in 1858 as a wedding gift for Dr. John Kirk and his wife, Caroline, but wasn't quite finished before construction was disrupted during the Civil War, and construction would not resume for many, many years. Not until after World War II, almost a full century later. The entire property was originally 1,880 acres. Before the Civil War, the Kirk family profited from the labor of enslaved people on the plantation, where cotton, rice, and indigo was grown and harvested, and where salt was also harvested from some brackish creeks. The Kirks would flee to nearby Granville at the start of the war after receiving word of Union soldiers in the area, and Union soldiers would end up setting up an encampment on the now abandoned property. And one Union soldier scratched a strange message on the mirror in the entryway that said, J.W. Co., 115th New York. Flee, rebels. Hell is here. 12 July 1863. To this day, no one knows the exact meaning of his message. Was he referring to the terrible aspects of war when he wrote hell is here? Or something else? Perhaps something paranormal? Caroline Kirk died in 1864 and John Kirk passed away in 1868. Their children, Emily and William, then inherited the plantation. The Kirks attempted to keep operations going but never made much money, not as much as they did before the war, and over the following decades the house sat abandoned for several long periods of time with tenant farmers occasionally living in it. John and Betsy Gold Sturgeon then purchased the house and its remaining 1,400 acres in 1946, and they restored and finally finished the old home. Betsy Sturgeon died in 1966. John died in 1978. The estate was then purchased by the Rose Hill Plantation Development Company, a joint venture of the Welton Corporation and Ontario Properties. And the company developed a gated community of 950 home sites, varying in size from patio lots to multi-acre pieces of land. The plantation house was preserved as a focal point of the community. And then Iva Roberts Welton, the director of Rose Hill Plantation House, supervised another rehabilitation of the house in 1985, and the house was subsequently opened up for tours and social events. 2 years later, in 1987, a fire seriously damaged the house. The exterior was restored, but the interior was uninhabitable until yet another restoration in 1996. That year, the Middleton White Foundation purchased the house and the remaining surrounding 12.5 undeveloped acres in an attempt to fix up and sell the home for use as a private residence. And today, the property is used for events and short-term rentals. It's a lot of history, and it is, of course, not surprisingly rumored to be haunted. Members of the Kirk family are buried in the family cemetery on the grounds, and their spirits have supposedly been sighted in and around the cemetery and also in the home. There have also been a few reported sightings of both the ghost of a Confederate soldier and a lady in white in the Rose Hill mansion. Visitors have additionally reported hearing disembodied whispers, seeing strange lights, feeling cold spots, and both hearing and seeing doors slam on their own. A South Carolina amateur historian was looking into the history of the Bluffton Rose Hill Plantation during the years when the house was abandoned by the owners and only tenant farmers were living on the property, and he found a story from a woman named Ethel Mason whose family once lived there. She was a little girl only 6 or 7 years old at the time. Her memories were fuzzy, especially in her advanced age, but she has distinctly remembered that she didn't like being outside at night and that she did everything in her power to get her chores done before the sun went down. And why was that? There was a lady, Ethel recalled. A lady in a white dress. I would see her sometimes if my mother sent me out for some reason. I tried not to look, but my eyes were always drawn to an upstairs window. If it was dark out, she'd be in there, watching me. Was she a motherly presence? Someone who might have been looking out for you while you did your chores? The historian asked her. No, Ethel said. No, she hated me. I could just tell. Something about her didn't feel right. The historian also spoke to a former state park employee who worked at the other site, the Union County Rose Hill site in the 1960s, when it was first sold to the State Park Service. This man asked to remain anonymous. It was the end of the summer season, school had already started, and the last of the summer visits were winding down. It was a Saturday just after 5 p.m. The ranger was doing a final walk through the property to make sure everything was secure before he went home for the day. And he said, I got the sense that someone was following me. Seems crazy, but that's how I felt. I couldn't hear footsteps or nothing like that. It was almost like I was imagining it. It's almost like I was imagining it, envisioning it in my mind, the sound of footsteps behind me, following the path I walked. Of course, every time he turned around, there was nothing there, but when he passed by the old ruins of the tenant houses, he heard something. It sounded like something inside had toppled over. Ridiculous, he thought to himself. These homes are empty. Still, he poked his head inside the ruins, not wanting to enter for fear of the structure collapsing on him, and he saw nothing, just as expected. The ranger decided the property had been sufficiently inspected and got into his vehicle. But as he drove away, he thought he saw something. He said, in my rearview mirror, back quite a ways, I saw what I can only describe as a shadow, but it wasn't quite that. I reckon it was more like a faint gray outline of a person, a kind of movement. I can't quite describe it, and I'll admit my vision has never been the most sharp, but I know I saw something. I felt the same presence I did earlier. I think it had reappeared to watch me leave.
Ugh.
Just a little smattering of sightings.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, I think, like we've said before, anytime we visit, these old plantations, they're just full of so much sadness and pain and brutality that it feels impossible that they wouldn't be haunted.
Yeah. If the if our belief that, like a lot of trauma
Yeah.
can kind of leave like a residue in a space or leave a spirit for whatever reason trapped there for some period of time, it would only make sense that they're all haunted that way. Yeah, just because, like you said, just so much pain and suffering.
I know. I actually, as you were saying that, there was a fire in Coeur d'Alene yesterday. One of our favorite restaurants actually burned down, the Wolf Lodge, but is where a very tragic, awful thing happened to, like in that area. Yeah.
Shasta Groney
like
and her family.
Fucking horrific thing. And I was actually talking to my therapist today. Somehow that came up. Don't even ask why. And I was just saying, like, I don't know. I was like, yeah, like the fire feels accidental and all of that. But sometimes in these situations, I think, or the earth was like, it's time for us to reclaim it. It's time, like, to cleanse this space. And so when I hear about, these hauntings in old historical locations or places where there's been a lot of trauma and tragedy and just awfulness, I think, like, yeah, maybe it's time to just start new. Get in there, like, bring in some professional energy healers, bring in some shaman, bring in Native American people and ask them to heal the land, and then hopefully move forward and build better memories there. When we were talking about that development of like 900 houses, I was like, there's not a fucking chance in hell I am knowingly living on land that was occupied in that way, like plantation land. It just feels like a lot of things.
I know. I do think that like most of the earth has seen so much trauma just because
That's true.
If you go back far enough.
That's true.
But it's different when you know what happened.
Yeah.
And then that's in your head.
It's really hard to wrap your head around. Like, I don't know. I am so in tune with those kinds of things, I think. I mean, I think we all are to a certain degree, but I would, like you said, like knowing, wouldn't you just think like, okay, so I'm standing in my kitchen, but like, what did this used to be and what happened in this particular square foot of the earth? And I don't know.
I know. I was talking to somebody the other day about like, is there a time limit for how long these spirits could kind of hang around? Because otherwise, all of Earth would be just continually haunted. Because people have died tragically in every single part of the earth.
But not on every square inch of the earth.
Not on every square inch.
So there might be a little.
But every place where there's been a human settlement.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, which is probably most of the earth.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, like, maybe the little plot where your house is, maybe there was stuff around it, but not on it.
Yeah, totally.
Feels like, what's that the game kids play where they like try not to step on a crack?
Hot lava?
Yeah, hot lava. Yeah, that's what it feels like. The floor is lava.
Yeah,
that's
the floor
what
is lava.
Floor is lava. Yes.
So here's a pic of the first Rose Hill Plantation I talked about. This is the
Of course, it's going to be beautiful. They always are these like incredible structures.
And this is that one that took forever to complete. This is that
this one's
in
weird
Union County.
This one's weird because it looks like it's stucco. Maybe it's just the way the brick is painted, like a soft yellowy color. It doesn't feel like the traditional.
No, the next one will be more traditional,
like Georgian, white sprawling. Okay, carry on.
So here's the other one.
Yeah, that's what I think of. You tell me plantation, my brain immediately thinks of like Oak Alley in Louisiana.
Yep. Yeah, that's the one in Bluffton there. And then this is just random, but inside this one in Bluffton, there's like the old staircase. And man, that is some staircase.
Wow. Okay, when you talk about a mansion, this is what I think of. I think of Barbie Dream House.
Yeah.
Walk in the front door, and this is only one winding staircase. But I always think of like two coming up and then coming to the second floor and then spreading across left and right. Dang.
But this one, very elegant. Yeah, I know. I feel like, these kind of staircases, like when you were a little kid, if you weren't, if you didn't grow up in a house with money.
Yeah.
It's like in your little kid brain, you're like, what is it like in a rich person's house?
This is immediately what you think of.
Yeah, I just think of them going up and down like these kind of staircases.
Right.
Like wearing like elegant ball gowns.
I was just going to say that. Yes. A man with a pipe in his mouth and a woman with giant cocktail rings, like costume jewelry that's not fake. And
I don't picture like somebody with like a Budweiser tank top and like Crocs and like cutoff jeans. Maybe a hat on backwards, like baseball hat on backwards, running up and down this staircase. It would be, it was so not fit. I wouldn't feel comfortable going up and down this. I would like, I don't work for the staircase. I have the wrong look for the staircase.
Oh, you could do it. It's just stairs. It's just a house. I know, but that's like as a little girl growing up playing MASH, which you probably did not play, but it was like mansion, something, shack, house. What was the A? It wasn't Airstream, but it was something, not great. And you always told me you got the M for mansion, and that's what I would envision.
Isn't that a funny thing, actually, when you think about like when you're a little kid compared to like when you get older, where like, oh man, I want to live in a mansion someday. But now it's like, okay, even if we had like a crazy amount of money,
oh my God,
I wouldn't want to live in a mansion. It's too much. Like running through this big, weird, like just the two of us and then Monroe, but then she'll be like out of here in a couple years. And I just picture like that weird stereotype or that cliched scene from like movies and stuff where we're sitting at the ends of this very long formal dining table, like 30 feet from one another.
Dad, can you pass the ketchup?
Yeah, it doesn't feel warm. There's nothing cozy about it.
True.
I mean, but I guess like a modern mansion is not going to be, it's like more like, it would be cool to have the space if you like, oh, we have an arcade room.
Sure.
Oh, we have a game room with billiards and stuff, like just for like fun things.
Okay, but also because I am the one that runs the household, I just immediately am thinking about like the electricity bill, the water bill, the maintenance.
But if you're crazy rich, you don't care.
No, you still, nope, that's not true. Because even if we had $1 billion in my brain, it's not about the cost of it. For me, it's the cost of time. I'm like, okay, well, I still have to stay on top of the staff that we now apparently have that runs everything.
We have Jeffrey for that.
Okay, well, Jeffrey, I am up Jeffrey's ass every day. And like, to me, I just think like, ugh, that just sounds exhausting. It's such a funny thing. You're right. Like when you're...
The most first world problem. Jeffrey.
Okay.
Why is the game room too cold again?
Oh, Jeffrey, why isn't the refrigerator stocked with my favorite peach pear LaCroix? I know they're nearly impossible to find, but we're billionaires and I want you to go find it.
Jeffrey, the caviar spoiled again.
Oh, yeah. Oh, not the row. No, but it is just so funny. Like as you become an adult and take on like, maybe you have your first apartment or your first house and then your second house that's a little bit bigger than your first house. You do see it in such different terms. You're like, that's a lot of windows to clean. Oh, that's a big roof to replace when it goes.
A lot of cost.
Like you're no longer thinking about like, I want to live in a big house and have all my friends over and eat pizza and have slumber parties every night. Because that's what I was thinking when I thought I was going to live in a mansion, was like, me and all my friends were going to live together.
I was thinking I'd be Richard Pryor from like, I think it's Brewster's Millions, where he just
I was going to be Richie Rich.
Somehow falls into all this money and just is going crazy with it. Okay, so real quick, we're going to get back to horror. Before we jump into Lynze's stories, Lynze and I will be going to Scarywood at Silverwood the Silverwood theme park.
Yes.
Saturday night, October 12th.
Nailed it.
That's what works for our schedule, 8 p.m. So 8 p.m., October 12th, Saturday night. We're going to meet people, whoever wants to go, at the baggage check / security station at the very beginning of where you would get in line by the parking lot. So just meet us at the baggage check, 8 p.m., October 12th. We'll be there between 8 and 8:15. Please don't be mad at us if you're late or you can't find it. We don't just keep waiting, because this is not an event we're in charge of. We're not getting any special tickets or discounts. We're just going.
Yeah. That just happens to be when we're going.
Yep. And we'd love it if you can make it.
I like how you're saying baggage check. Like they're
That's
checking.
what the lady on the phone said.
I know. And it was cracking me up then, like as if you were checking luggage to come into the park.
Yeah.
It's like the security checkpoint for.
They look through your bags, right?
So obviously, we don't suspect that anybody from out of town is going to be coming in for this. So locals, it's like that first spot. As you come out of the parking lot, you approach that lined fence area, and this is where they make you go through the metal detector and check your bags. So
we'll be near that.
That out on the outside of it, not the inside of it. Because we believe, we've never been to Scarywood, if you guys can believe that.
Yeah.
We're pretty certain that once you enter through the security check, the frightening stuff starts happening. Yeah. And our concern was that if we met inside the park, it would just be chaos and we would just be, I would be crying in a corner somewhere. So we decided that was the best place. So if you have questions about that exactly, I can send you an email with my terrible diagram. info@scaredtodeathpodcast.com. And again, that's Saturday, October 12th. We are going to get there at 8. We will wait until about 8:15 at that first security checkpoint, and then we'll all go in together.
Yeah. Fun. All right, let's tell some stories.
Let's do it. Who's your Layla this week?
I got Red Layla.
Ooh, Red Layla. Sounds like a band.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. Hello. Sorry. So my first story, I just skipped an entire part. So we are going to explore some lost time.
Okay.
In this story. Hello, Dan and Lynze, the absolute scream queens.
Hello.
I fell in love with your podcast while driving 2 hours to visit my boyfriend every week last summer. Yes. It made the remote, dark, and forested drive much more enjoyable and was the perfect thing to listen to during dark, spooky, rainy drives. Mm-hmm. I heard one of your episodes about missing time, and I thought you may enjoy one that I have to tell. I still wonder if it's as weird and as unusual as I think. Maybe you guys can help me decide. I went to a remote college in upstate New York, centered in a state park. We were surrounded by millions of acres of wilderness, and needless to say, being alone in the wilderness can be pretty freaky. My freshman year, I learned about an empty lot down a somewhat busy road where the state troopers dumped roadkill. It's a popular birding spot as eagles and other birds of prey frequent the area, and as someone with an interest in both vulture culture, aka taxidermy and dead things, and living animals, I couldn't wait to visit and explore. 2 of my friends, Alice and Sam, came along also. We were excited to see what we could find. After nearly 40 minutes of scenic views, including lakes, small rolling mountains, and dense forests, we arrived. To the left of the large lot, there was a big hangar containing construction equipment, as well as some pavement outside for cars to park, along with various miscellaneous sheds. It was a colder April day, and snow was still on the ground. We didn't plan to stay long due to the weather. Every so often, we'd hear a car zoom by, but the area was by no means populated. The road was almost always one lane with a speed limit of 55 miles per hour, and the nearest house was a couple miles down the road, and the closest town was another 35 minutes away. To the right of the hangar were approximately 60 plus fell logs, and to the very far right, there was a large berm that had been reclaimed by tall grass and thickets. The large lot was next to a road, and you could hear the cars from within the woods no matter where you were. The entire wooded area couldn't have been larger than 200 yards in diameter. The place was absolutely littered with carcasses, bones, and clumps of hair strewn about the place, along with miscellaneous wildlife remains like legs and hooves. Ugh. It was mostly deer, though we did find one dog and a fisher skull, which is a large weasel. The young trees made the whole area appear darker once you entered the woods. The vibe was a little spooky in a really fun way. After a while, Alice wanted to split up to look in a different part of the woods that bordered the road. After about 20 minutes, Sam and I realized we couldn't see or hear Alice. I felt a little uncomfortable that we couldn't find her. It was weird given that it was a pretty small area. I mean, you basically couldn't get lost. Even at the far end of the woods, we could hear cars driving along the road, making it pretty hard to even become disoriented. But for some reason, things just felt weird. We began yelling her name, walking around, trying to find her. We found it strange that she didn't respond to us, and as it started to grow darker, I was becoming unnerved. After maybe 30 minutes or so, Sam and I decided to make our way to the berm where the car was, hoping Alice would eventually have the same idea and meet us there. As we arrived at the berm, we saw Alice standing about 30 feet away, looking terrified as she briskly walked towards us. "Didn't you hear me? I have been screaming at the top of my lungs for you guys. Why didn't you come towards me?" She sounded annoyed, panicked, and scared. "What do you mean? We never heard you. Not even once. Where did you go?" She walked us back through the exact trail she had been on, and the entire time she was, at most, 40 feet from us, screaming our names at the top of her lungs. We could tell that she truly must have been yelling harshly because her voice and her throat were scratchy sounding. We never once heard her screaming for us, just the occasional car driving by. We quickly decided to get out of there. How was it even possible that she'd been so close and yet we never heard her at all? We did return there a couple other times after that in the spring, though we never ever split up again. Since then, I've heard stories from friends and classmates about wormholes in the woods there, doors in the middle of nowhere with no foundation, effigies hanging from tree branches, and strange eyes peering out of windows. I've had my fair share of bizarre or unexplainable experiences in that state park, and I'm inclined to believe that not all of them are natural. M.
Yay. What kind of Blair Witch Project park are they going to?
Oh, yeah.
Effigies and trees and like little things, and that's so crazy.
Just the idea of like a carcass park.
I know. I had never heard of that before. I'd never heard of a roadkill dump.
But it makes sense, right? Because like I was thinking about, okay, for us, it's not highway patrol that we call, but like several years ago, it was really sad. But several years ago, somebody hit a deer on the road in front of our house, and it's a fairly busy road. And so I was like, God, what do we do? Do you remember this?
Oh yeah.
And like we called, and they were like, yeah, we can send somebody out, but not really. And I think that you and a neighbor picked up said dead deer and put it in our garbage. And I remember thinking like that is not okay, but like I was very upset about it. I wanted I wanted to give the deer like a fucking burial, you know. But when you start to think about it, it's like, well, what does like highway patrol or like animal? I was gonna say animal collection. What who do you call? You know, like if you had like a raccoon infestation, animal patrol. What is the word I'm looking for?
I don't know.
You know what I'm talking about. There's like a state agency.
I think animal control.
Yeah, I think it's animal control. Yeah. You would like call them. Okay, well, if they come and remove dead animals, like I don't know, what was I thinking? What did I think they did with them?
Well, in most places, according to the internet, the
internet is very reliable.
They're taken to an incinerator, like some kind of facility where they're incinerate, which makes sense.
Sure.
But not every place is probably going to have a convenient roadkill incinerator. Or maybe and then there's also, it says like sometimes roadkill are taken to landfills.
That's what this sounds like.
Sometimes they're taken to be part of like a composting process. Sometimes they're taken to animal sanctuaries where they can be fed to carnivores and stuff there.
Oh, that makes sense. I mean,
sorry, this can't be true, but this is what AI is saying.
Yes, is it the AI summary?
Yes, it's the AI summary. Oh
God, they make me laugh so hard.
And because like they don't understand like good information between bad information, so I can believe all those. The next one, says churches and soup kitchens.
What?
In some areas, roadkill is butchered and distributed to churches and soup kitchens. Is that true? Like maybe very selectively. I just can't imagine like, what are we having today? Raccoon stew?
Okay, well here's what I'm imagining because my brain doesn't work the same as yours. I'm imagining Lynze Cummins, driving along the road and I collide with a deer.
Yeah.
And then I call and I like say like, hey, I call you and you're like, okay, you come and get the deer. We know how to like drain the blood and preserve the meat. So then maybe in that instance, it's like when maybe if you live in an area that is full of people who know how to manage it and can get to it right away, then maybe deer meat goes to a
maybe
soup
deer
kitchen.
But if it's like a cat, if it's a cat on the side of the freeway, they're not all of a sudden like, all right, it's Taco Tuesday again.
Oh my God.
Sloppy Joes.
Oh my God, stop it. We are having tacos tonight. And I did make Sloppy Joes from scratch. Like
I saw that in the meat in the fridge.
Oh dear.
But yeah, and also I had never heard of the term, there's so much in that story.
Vulture culture?
Yes. That is great. Vulture culture is just, I mean, it's fun to say.
I know.
And then also Fisher skull. That's a large weasel.
Yeah. It says
that literally sounds like a cryptid. Sounds like a monster.
Oh, maybe it is.
Fisher skull.
Like just Fisher, not with a C. Fisher. Fisher skull.
Oh, like fish.
Yeah, a Fisher skull.
Huh. I don't Fisher skull weasel. Maybe that's a local term. They're just called, I see. They're called a fisher.
Yeah.
I thought the name was Fisher skull.
One word.
Oh, yes.
I was like, why is this so hard for you to accept?
No, they're really cool looking, actually.
Okay.
Sometimes they're called like a fisher cat, even though they're not a cat, and they're actually beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, sorry we went off on a 5-minute tangent of internet sleuthing.
But yeah, that was a creepy story with the missing time and everything, and yes.
Yeah, and just like having that happen at a carcass graveyard situation. Fascinating.
Yeah.
I learned a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, are you ready to talk about astral projection?
I am.
Great. Hello. My boyfriend Victor and I have listened to your podcast for quite a while now. He introduced me to it about a year ago, and ever since I've contemplated whether or not I should share my story, but I finally decided to give it a go.
Thank you.
Before I begin, I think it's worth noting that I refuse to believe in ghosts before this story, and I'm not at all spiritual or religious. Our story begins long before Victor and I were dating. I have been a chronic victim of sleep paralysis for over a decade. I have never experienced the typical, quote, demon on your chest and inability to breathe, end quote, effect others have. My paralysis has always been much more terrifying, or perhaps more simple, than a little guy sitting on me. I have suffered with paralysis for so long that I've trained myself out of it by remaining calm and trying to move my toes, fingers, and call out. Eventually, someone in my house would hear me whimper in my sleep and would wake me from my visions. However, I did also accidentally learn how to astral project and walked with the non-malevolent spirits I sometimes see from these paralysis episodes. Sometimes I would wake paralyzed and see things like the refrigerator light come on from down the hall, the door hitting the wall as it opened, followed by a man's voice yelling, "Get in here now!" from beyond the inside of my fridge. Sometimes I would wake and see dark figures standing in the room with me, ignoring me, walking out the window to join other dark figures in the street. And one time, a spirit boy even pulled my astral form out of my body and showed me a parallel world of my own house where no one was on the other side of the wall could see us or hear us. When I would wake up from these instances, I dismissed what had happened as a silly little dream, knowing that acknowledgement would only give the spirits more power. I didn't actually want to be a spirit medium. Then in 2020, I started dating Victor. I would catch him saying super emo things that I hadn't heard from boyfriends since middle school, like, I have a ghost that follows me, but we're chill. And I get random bruises and scratches on me. And I think he takes my form because he's been with me for so long. I always scoffed and jested in return. Okay, Mr. Broody, calm down. Everybody gets bruises that they don't know where they came from. He did not enjoy that I was dismissive of the topic and would show me the new bruises and scratches when they showed up. Yeah, I would say. You just roughhoused your husky. You got scratches from her. And then I would shrug it off again and again. The first time I could not come up with an explanation, however, was when we hopped into a shower together while at his apartment. He took his long black hair out of the bun and washed it in the water, cascading down his back and covering his neck and shoulder blades. When we got out, he toweled his hair, and 3 fresh, deep scratches had suddenly appeared. "Oh my gosh!" I exclaimed. "What happened?" Victor was confused and said he hadn't felt anything. I took my nails and I scratched his back to try and see if I had somehow accidentally done this, but even at my hardest, I could not recreate the gashes that were welted red under his skin. He also tried to no avail. That was not there before the shower. That's fresh, I huffed with concern. My boyfriend gave me a smug, "I told you so" look, and I rolled my eyes. A couple months later, Victor had gotten a roommate. The roommate was unpacking, hanging things on his wall when he saw Victor walk down the hall towards the living room. He asked, "Hey, Victor, can you grab me the hammer off my desk while you're over there?" But then Victor called out from his bedroom, confused. "What?" I hopped off Victor's bed, poking my head into the roommate's room. "What was that?" I repeated. The roommate got off his step stool, confused. Is Victor in his room?" he asked me. I furrowed my brows and nodded. The roommate's face went pale as he laughed nervously. "No way. You're pulling my leg. Victor!" he called down the hallway into the living room as he moved in that direction. But Victor walked out of his bedroom and stood behind the roommate. "What's up?" The roommate jumped as he turned around, staring dumbfounded at us. "No," he said shakily. "I swear I just saw Victor walk by my room. Positive. Without a doubt." I had an uneasy feeling, but once more my boyfriend looked at me smugly and chuckled. "I told you guys, but you didn't believe me." Okay, that's weird. Yeah, but it doesn't mean ghosts are real and that you have one that moves around with you. I poked him in the chest matter-of-factly. Okay, he shrugged with a grin, and that was that. A couple months later, Victor was sleeping at my house, his husky asleep at the foot of my bed. I slept on the edge of the bed that faced the bedroom door. In the opposite corner of the door was a tall, standing mirror that I used for cosplay photos. It rotated on a swivel, and at this point in time, we made the mistake of leaving the mirror turned to face us in bed as we slept. Victor was the big spoon, sleeping soundly next to me. I was dreaming happily when I felt the familiar dread lock my body down and wake me up. I opened my eyes, taking in the dark room. I was confused. Nothing was there. Why was I paralyzed? Our dog then surprised me by watching her astral form stand up and raise her hackles, growling from deep within her throat at something under our bed. I had never seen her behave this way. Dread sank in as she put her shoulders down and crawled under the bed to retrieve something. I heard Victor's voice clear as day directly underneath me. Baby? Baby, help! The dog lunged. I heard the ripping of fabric and a man screaming under my bed. My heart pounded as he called out to me again. Please, baby, it's me, the real me. You have to believe me. The one up there with you is the fake. Our dog shook violently with something in her teeth. Goosebumps raised across my entire body. I closed my eyes in fear and did everything I could to unlock my jaw to scream for help. Baby? Baby! I was shaken awake from the paralysis. The dog was quiet and sleeping on the floor. My boyfriend held me by the shoulders and concern washed over his face. We locked eyes in the darkness, but I felt afraid of him. How did I know that this was him? Did I make the wrong choice? Was the body in front of me some wicked possession and Victor's true soul was condemned somewhere in the astral plane? Did that even make any sense? What had I done? Or what had I not done? Victor interrupted my flood of thoughts with a tight embrace. It's okay, he cooed softly. It was just a bad dream, he said reassuringly, then pressed my face into his chest protectively. I laid there stiffly, unsure if I could trust him. I fell asleep, exhausted, thinking about it. The next morning, before he left for his apartment, I grabbed his hands, looking at the ground. I want to tell you about last night. He looked at me with kind, intense eyes. Of course. As I relayed the night's events to him, his face sunk and grew unusually serious. What? I prodded. Something bothered him about my story. He hesitated. I didn't want to tell you this because I didn't want to scare you, but last night, after I pulled you close to me to go to sleep, I saw a dark figure that looked like me walk out of our mirror and phase through the door. I stared at him wide and unblinking. All the fear I had felt the night before now washed over me once again. I shook my head, my spine tingling with the sensation of being watched. I felt so unsafe. We said our goodbyes, and I promptly went to my roommate who happened to practice witchcraft, and I told her everything. Her reply? Oh, hell no. She immediately cleansed me and the house. And then a couple months later, my roommate, Victor, and myself all moved into a new house. And I haven't had an incident since, and it's been over 2 years now. I doubt this personal poltergeist will ever be truly gone unless Victor himself banishes it. Claire.
Yee.
So weird.
Mm-hmm.
So peculiar.
Yeah, the whole concept of astral projection, by the way, that story like giving me like in the best way, like Insidious vibes.
Oh, yeah.
From that like franchise.
Yeah.
But the whole concept of astral projection is so crazy that you could leave your body but not die. Like you could just like go, your spirit could go travel to random other locations in this world or elsewhere.
Yeah.
On this whole like theoretical astral plane.
Right.
And then go back into your body. But that also, if you're not careful, which is, you know, a lot of them, this is like the kind of the crux of the movie Insidious. They did such a great job with this.
Yeah.
Of like that fear that while you're out there doing whatever your spirit is, something else could go in your body and block you from re-entering it.
I know.
And I hope that the phenomena of astral projection is totally real because that means we definitely have spirits.
Oh, okay. That's a positive spin.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if that's possible, then there's some part of us that is not connected to our mortal coil, if you will.
In my mind, astral
Mhm.
projection is like Wendy and Peter Pan, and like,
Yeah.
you just come get me, and we'll just like fly through the night, and we'll go visit places, and we'll be cute little fairies. And to me, this is like, oh my God, this is so like my like neurospicy brain. I'm like, we could get so much done. We could like see all the countries, all the cities, do all the things while also getting plenty of rest, not aging too quickly. Like we can experience all the things. We can eat all the foods without gaining too much weight. Like it becomes like very practical to me.
Did you just say neurospicy?
Uh-huh.
Is that a real term or do you just make that up?
It's like a very commonly known term for like a brain that is like, yeah, a spicy brain.
I've heard neurodivergent, but I haven't heard neurospicy.
Yeah, it's like a, yeah.
Okay. Just checking. I
Yeah.
didn't know if that was a Lynzeism or like a word that's out there.
Oh no, it's out there in the ether, my
Okay.
friend. Yeah. It's like, I've been reading, I'll talk about this on the bonus episode for September, but I've been reading so much fascinating literature about women, ADHD, and perimenopause. And it is fucking fascinating. Ladies, if you are in the 40 range, start finding these articles. In fact, Prevention wrote a beautiful article this last week about it, like how the hormones and the things and I'm like, oh my God, I think I have been ADD my whole life and no one knew it because I'm an excellent multitasker.
Oh, yeah.
And then as your hormones change again, as you approach menopause, it can really bring it to the forefront. Neurospicy.
Take your neurospices.
That's not how it works. Take your brain MD, take your happy saffron. Don't let your spicy brain get ahead of you.
I can't stop thinking about, this is a great story, but I can't stop thinking about Skullfisher. And I think I know why I want that to be a thing.
Okay.
Because the visual of this fluffy little weasel, but with just a hairless skull for a head. Kind of like, oh my God, there's a superhero. I think Nick Cage played him in a movie, and I'm totally blanking on him right now, but he like would ride a motorcycle, and he'd have like, he'd be flaming. His head would just be a skull, no skin on it. It's a cool visual.
I know what you're talking about, but unfortunately, I was recently shopping for our 7-year-old niece's birthday.
Yeah.
And she's reading Beverly Cleary, The Mouse and the Motorcycle. So what
that's
I'm
what you're thinking
envisioning and what
No,
you're
it's like
talking
real metal.
about.
This little weasel with a skull, like Skullfisher. And it also sounds a lot like Skullfucker, which I think is what gives it that intense vibe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Well, you guys, welcome to Scared to Death. Welcome to two very spicy brains.
Two spicy brains.
You
Two
have a
spicy neuros.
You have a spicy brain.
Those were great. Thanks for those stories.
Yeah, it was fun variety this
was.
week. I really enjoy that. I love digging back into astral projection because it is such a heady concept.
It is.
It kind of like, to me, it's in the same vein as like back rooms, where it's just so hard to explain and yet feels entirely plausible.
Yeah, astral projection feels more plausible than backrooms to me. I mean, I guess like, whatever, all this stuff could be possible. But astral projection, people have talked about that for a long time. Different names and stuff, but just the concept of your soul escaping your body and being able to venture out on its own and then but return to your body.
Maybe people are just doing a lot of shrooms.
It does feel like your
that's what it feels
soul
like
leaves
then.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Rather-
Yeah. Sometimes your soul puts on a cowboy hat and goes ham for 4 hours before falling to the ground crying.
Do you want to thank our Annabelles?
I do. Again, you guys, I'm really proud of this month's charity, Beyond Differences. Thank you so much for entrusting us with your contributions to this community and trusting us to donate it to reputable places. Ashley Kidd, Justin Stewart, Travis Jacobs, Haley Jenkins, Chris Cecil, Riley Hindle, Morgan Shafalo, Jenna Coffey, Janice Chavez, Jose Rumberg, and Count Cracula.
Count Cracula, nice.
Do it. One Count Cracula.
One piece of crack. One rock of crack. I'd like to thank Christian Padilla, Brandon Hoffa, Courtney, Whitney Clevenger, Myra Hickman, Mart Blart, the mall cop.
That's great.
Juan Morales, Sergio Moose. But like not Moose is the last name, but like known as Moose.
Oh, Sergio, aka Moose.
Yeah, just Sergio, and then in quotes Moose. So I'm guessing that's
okay.
AKA.
Got it. Because I was like Sergio and Moose; those are not two names that like.
A lot of people named Sergio get called Moose.
No, I was thinking like that's not a last name that matches that first name.
Totally. Megan Haney, Ashley Major, Ashley Major sounds like, just because of the military with Major, but I'm like, I picture somebody very serious. I am Ashley Major. What do you need?
Well, I'm Lindsay Minor, so.
Tyler and Holly Olson, Anthony Bailey, and Skullfisher the Skullfucker.
Okay.
Or not.
Okay. And I have quite a few spoopy shout outs this week. Okay. I was like, gosh, what's going on in September? And then I was like, oh, yeah.
Getting ready for October.
Oh, no, I wasn't even thinking that. I was like, well, 9 months ago, what were you folks up to? New Year's Eve-ish? Like, Okay. To Shepherd from your mom, Amanda, happy 12th birthday. You and your brother are the very best pickles on the planet. I'm so proud of you and I love you. Cute. To Haley and to us here at Scared to Death, from Haley, happy birthday to my two favorite things, Scared to Death and myself.
Aww.
Turning 30 can't be the scariest thing you've done. After all, look at your 20s. That is valid, sister. That is valid.
30s are great.
30s are fucking awesome. But let me tell you, 40... I am loving 40. Oof, do I love it. Anyways, Haley, have a great day and give yourself even more grace with this coming year. To Mike from your twin flame and our dumpster gremlins, Mackenzie, a.k.a. Panda, Temperance, and Gage. Happy 15th wedding anniversary. You've been everything I ever could have dreamt of. Thank you for inviting me to lunch and never letting me go. You've given me a beautiful life and two feral rabid dumpster gremlins. I love when other people talk about their kids like this.
I love the term dumpster gremlin.
I love it. I've never met anyone that works harder than you do, and yet you still make time to teach our kids. You're truly an amazing man and father, and I look forward to growing pruny with you. Cute. Oh, you guys are cute. To Shannon from Johnny, happy 40th birthday. I love you so much and cannot wait to spend the rest of our lives together. To Emma Jane from your mom, Tamara, happy 16th birthday and I love you. To Shauna Sharkey from Kyle, your favorite brother, happy birthday to my amazing sister. You've really helped me through some tough times. I love you so much. And lastly, to James from Megan, to the most patient, caring, and gentle man I've ever met. James, I'm so excited to marry you and celebrate life with you forever. Also, while I'm here, happy birthday to you and to me. I'm so happy I'll always be one day older than you forever.
Aw. Well,
great shout outs this week, you guys.
Yeah,
so sweet. Dumpster gremlins.
Great shout outs. That's our show. Thank you for continuing to send in your personal tales of terror to mystory@scaredtodeathpodcast.com. You can email us for everything else, including the spoopy shout outs, info@scaredtodeathpodcast.com. Thank you to Logan Keith scoring today's show. Thanks to Heather Rylander organizing the My Story emails. Thanks to book editor Drew Atana, polishing and preparing listener stories for book number 6. Thank you to Sophie Evans finding the first story I told this week, and thanks to Olivia Lee for finding the second. We're on Facebook and Instagram where we post pics that accompany episodes and more at Scared to Death Podcast. We also have a private Facebook group called Creeps and Peepers, full of fellow horror lovers, and big thanks to the All-Seeing Eyes, the Creeps and Peepers moderators, for doing a fantastic job. Enjoy your nightmares, Creeps and Peepers. Hope you were scared to death, you dumpster gremlins.
Bye.
If spirits threaten me in this place, fight water by water and fire by fire. Banish their souls into nothingness and remove their powers until the last trace. Let these evil beings flee through time and space. Evil may pass through, but hath no home here within, scared to death.
Bad Magic Productions.
In some areas, roadkill is butchered and distributed to churches and soup kitchens. Is that true?